I love this day. Today is All Saints Sunday. During the announcements, I'm going to say a prayer for all those who have died over the past year. And it is a special and wonderful day. It's a day to get all dressed up and do church fancy. So this sermon is a sermon about saints today. And I want to talk about saints, although not in the way that we might think of saints. So to get us started, I want to tell you a story from the history books that sounds a lot like the evening news. Use your imaginations for a moment. In the year 165, an epidemic swept through the Roman Empire. It was a devastating disease. While we can't know for sure, we think it was the first case of smallpox in the West. It killed as much as a third of the population, including the emperor himself. People were in a panic. No one knew how to care for the sick and the dying. In fact, most people didn't even try. Throughout the Roman world, when stricken by the disease, people simply ran, leaving behind their neighbors and their friends and their parents and their children. And to be fair, what else could they do? Their pagan religion offered little comfort, where their prayers were more like bribes than anything else. And for them to say that a pagan god loved them or even cared for them would seem nonsensical. But one group stayed behind. One group gathered the sick. One group nursed the stricken. One group cared for strangers and family alike. And these were the Christians. Historians have noted that even the most elementary nursing will greatly reduce mortality. That's just food and water. And it's no stretch to say that Christian caregivers armed with just care and cleanliness and food and water could have reduced deaths in their cities by 2/3. This is an important story, if only for the fact that religion has gotten a bad rap these days. Comedian and talk show host Bill Maher made headlines recently blasting people of faith. He's an avowed atheist, and he declared that ISIS or any other Middle Eastern horror is simply the end point of all religion. In response, an enthusiastic blogger added that you'll never see a free-thinker atheist suicide bomber. Well, I suppose this is true. But I also ask that we pay close attention to the doctors and nurses caring for those stricken by Ebola in West Africa. Notice when you see them on Skype during the broadcast and look for the cross adorning the wall behind them, or some other symbol of faith embedded in their logo. They're not all Christians, but many are. And know that people of faith are on the ground this day caring for the least of God's children, and this is the fruit of religion that is good and kind and follows the teaching of the one we call the great physician. During the winter months, I can look through the trees from Old Leeds Road, and I can see the giant cross emblazoned on the hospital on Montclair Road. And I know this particular hospital is moving, but I am grateful for that cross, that reminder to all of us in our city that hospitals are our legacy. Hospitals are the legacy of these early saints. Saints. Now, this is a different idea than when we usually think of saints. It's a different impression. I think when we think of saints at all, we tend to figure that they're saints of the stained glass variety, holy women and holy men, so perfect and other that they simply can't be like us. But in fact, the word saint only meant for them to be apart. It only meant for them to be different. And this is what they did back in the days of Rome, or what we do anytime we try to be different than the world around us. And if being different seems like a tall order, then remember that we are never meant to be different alone. Okay, this is a good time to tell you that we entered a St. Luke's float in the Crestline Halloween Parade. Anybody see it? Anybody see it? Okay, it was amazing. In fact, you can see the remnants of it in the corner of our back lot. And some thanks are in order here. Okay, because it was a St. Luke's Halloween float, it was designed by an architect, built by a contractor, right, and dreamed up by a woman who must have dominated homecoming week in her high school days. It is a replica of St. Luke's. It's awesome. It's complete with a steeple and bells, and we had children throwing candy and a preacher to boot, and it was perfect, except for one missed calculation. Tree limbs hang low in this neighborhood. All right, yeah. so do traffic lights and cable lines, which made for some artful driving as this mini St. Luke's, complete with steeple, slowly made its way through the village. And along the parade route, the cheering crowd was suddenly quiet as our other church spire was stuck ever so slightly on a power line crossing Church Street. Hundreds of people, young and old, stood holding their collective breaths as the church inched by, and the steeple leaned over farther and farther and farther and farther. And then suddenly it popped back into place, and everybody started yelling and screaming. It was amazing. And we resumed throwing beads and blow pops, and someone called out, "The Lord be with you!" It was awesome. Yes, and he's right. The Lord is with us every day, not just during the Crestline Halloween parade. And when we gather like this, we're reminded how much the Lord is with us, how much we are protected and guided and inspired and looked after by the good Lord who loves us so. But still, we're together for more than inspiration. No, when we come together, we change each other. In the fall of 1981, a group of older men stepped out of a van in front of an abandoned monastery for a radical experiment. These were healthy men, but age had taken its toll. And remember, this is in 1981, so this was in the day before 75 was the new 55. Now, they were to live together for 5 days in an environment that was meant to be in every way possible for these men, 1959. Perry Como crooned on the radio. Ed Sullivan appeared in black and white on their television. These men were asked not merely to reminisce, but to inhabit the past. If they talked about sports, it was about Johnny Unitas or Wilt Chamberlain. If they discussed the news, it was about the first satellite into orbit, and so on. They were also required to live like they were 50, carrying their own stuff, cooking their own meals, walking upstairs. And at the end of 5 days, these scientists were astounded at the change. These men stood straighter, they walked faster, they looked younger, their environment changed them, and here's what I'm thinking. Saints. Saints are made in community. Saints are made here. Whenever I prepare a couple for marriage, I'll usually tell them something that everybody already knows. I'll tell them that crazy leaks out all over the place, which means if you're in a relationship with a crazy person, they make you crazy, all right? Well, conversely, if you're in a relationship with someone good, it makes you good. Love leaks out too. And when we love each other, we make each other better. We make each other more generous. We make each other more kind. We make each other more empathic. More. We just make each other more. During the 10:30 service, and I'm not sure this is why you're all here, but you'll be happy in just a minute. During the 10:30 service, we're baptizing 8 children. Right. Congratulations. You got an extra hour of sleep. You came to church early. 8 children. But which simply means that whenever we have baptisms, there'll be 10 total children over the weekend. We're simply inviting them to learn and to grow and to love and to pray inside this very special family. I wonder how this environment will form these children or change these children. But just think of the implications if we pull it off. Our children at St. Luke's can grow up here expecting to be different. They can grow up expecting people to respect each other or to hear each other or to help each other or to pray with each other or for each other. They can learn what it means to honor our elders or to value each life. They can watch us as we defend the weak or comfort the suffering or leave no one behind. They can see all of those things, and then they'll be different. They will be saints because they grew and they played and they learned and they watched us under this steeple. We can do this. As I've said this before, if we are only kind to each other, then we will be ahead of the game in 2014. I want to say this again. If we are only kind, we will be ahead of the game in 2014. If we are only kind, we will be saints. In the 5th chapter of Matthew, Jesus preached the Sermon on the Mount. And as often happens with a story we know so well, we don't know it all. One of those ways we miss on this story is the word blessed. This word, like saint, is a church word. It's become old-fashioned and clunky at best and unattainable or judgmental at worst. But the word for blessed simply means happy, which simply means that if we face life together with meekness and kindness and purity of spirit, then we will be happy. It means that if we cry with our friends together and if we hold our heads high together, even when the world is ugly and mean, then we can be happy. Then we will know joy. If we can do all of these things, we will be saints and we will change each other. Who knows? From under this steeple, maybe we could change our world. But for now, we can do this, if only for our children. Happy All Saints' Day. Amen.